I want to make a distinction about the generations and their timelines. Generally understood, Generation Z is the generation that followed the millennial generation, which is my generation. And their birth years start around 1995 and cut off around 2010. The following generation, Generation Alpha, started in around 2010 and is just rounding off the 15-year period that defines their generation at 2025. So we can distinguish different technological epochs just within those 30 years. It's pretty fascinating and really intense to think about the fact that just in 30 years, we've had such a meteoric shift in how we interact with technology that it's impacting two generations in such a short time span in completely different ways. Obviously, there are things that they've experienced that they share, like screens, cell phones, instant communication, the internet. The one key distinction, though, that even Jonathan Haidt points out in his book, The Anxious Generation, is smartphones. And smartphones are significant. The first iPhone appeared on the market in 2007, which it's, as a millennial, I was 22 at the time. That just rattles me. That's so strange. That doesn't seem like that long ago, but then it also seems like eons ago. So it's very weird contextualizing that. But when you contextualize it for the generations, Generation Z and Gen Alpha, there is a sharp distinction that is really the iPhone, the smartphone, is beginning to really take shape right as Gen Alpha is coming into the world. So the significance of that is not just children interacting with screens. The significance revolves around our instantaneous access to the internet, the forward-facing camera, the invention of the selfie. Very significant. Way more significant than you would posit. The rise, the acceleration of social media, and then how all of that interacted with the societal, political landscape and how we make decisions as a society. Okay, let's do a little thought experiment. So, let's pretend the year is 1910. I don't have the exact years off the top of my head here, but I'm guessing the radio was invented. The popular consumer radio started really taking off around that time. I think it was in the teens. So just imagine the differences between how the younger generation was interacting with the world environment by listening to the radio, getting their information through the radio, getting their music through the radio, than the old generation, their parents. And the idea of more instant communication or the ability to learn something by listening to a device in your living room was unprecedented. So of course, that older generation would be slow to adapt, slow to understand. There's a lot of analogies that you can present to the modern day. Hope that's obvious. Just like boomers still use AOL, I can imagine this generation, all the way back then at the turn of the century, were struggling to understand how to adapt to the new landscape, the new technological landscape of the consumer radio. That technology had staying power for, you could argue, 70 years. But we've incorporated that so profoundly into our culture that we don't even give it a second thought. Radio just exists. It's just part of our nature, part of our society. Now, I hope this analogy kind of sheds some light on how we can understand the differences between Generation Alpha and their parents, which are mostly millennials, some Gen X, some Gen Z. But that is such a sharp contrast. The technology from the millennial, the parent generation, wasn't necessarily phased out, but radically manipulated to present an entirely different landscape than what the parent generation understood from their childhood. As a millennial, I take an irrational pride in being part of the generation that was the last childhood to really grow up pre-internet. Just put that into context. Generation Alpha, they are babies, literally babies. The oldest of the Generation Alpha right now is 15. And they have never known a world without smartphones. Smartphones, not cell phones. Smartphones. Phones that can access the internet. Phones that have social media. Phones that have forward-facing cameras that you can take selfies on. They've never known a world without selfies. They've never known a world without instant access to video, without FaceTime, without being able to instantly communicate with anyone in the world at any point in time with a screen, with video cameras. It's mind-boggling. I think about this all the time. I don't know if other people think about this. What that means, though, they've adapted, and they've adapted so much quicker. Their brains adapted to a world where the internet was prioritized over direct interactions. And I think that's demonstrably true. The evidence that Jonathan Haidt lays out in his book, The Anxious Generation, there's so much there that he presents that showcases how social media, how smartphones, how selfies, how forward-facing cameras contributed to a rise in anxiety amongst Gen Z and now Gen Alpha. I don't want to put this moniker of victim on Gen Alpha. I think the second we start doing that, this is my main point and my main goal of this video. As much as we can acknowledge that Gen Z has been the victim of a horrendous experiment in prioritizing the advancement of the internet, I think it's important that we not put that exact same framework on the coming generation. I think we can stop the cycle. We have the power to stop the cycle by being conscious of that phenomenon. And I can't give Jonathan Haidt enough credit, and I think the world is indebted to his hard work and what he did and what he contributed to the whole conversation, because he kind of got this whole thing started. Him and many others, lots of social psychologists have been studying this kind of stuff, but he's really responsible for popularizing it. How that social consciousness really affects us, it can do it in two ways. It can do it by convincing us that the world is all going to hell and we have no way out, or it can do it by convincing us that we are the agents of change, and we can foster a new way of interacting with this technology. And part of that new way is understanding where Gen Alpha is coming from, where its baseline is. Their baseline is a phone-based reality, and we just have to accept that. That doesn't mean we just roll over and become slaves to the technology. That means that we consciously interact with the technology. We use the technology for its benefits. We don't use the technology without thinking. Technology can be good and bad simultaneously. It's all in how we are consciously engaging with it. What Generation Alpha is now, they are a clear slate. They are a blank slate. Their minds are getting filled. Their minds are getting affected. We have the power to consciously intervene as their parents, as the generation that can help guide them to become wise stewards of their own reality. Let's move forward consciously. Let's care about the children. Anyway, this video is just a little primer for this idea that I'm developing about the Generation Alpha paradigm shift. This is a phrase I'm coining to engage people and hopefully start a movement around being more conscious of how the human race is evolving alongside technology and how we can steer it in a positive, human forward trajectory. If this is something that interests you, please subscribe. Stay tuned. I'm going to have some more videos. This is a whole thing I want to get going. And yeah, comment if you have anything to say. Would love to hear from you. Till next time, peace.